Hello, I'm Tim Jackson, and for the past 2 years, I've had the privilege of chairing the Competency Map Task Force. I'm here today with my colleague, Irene Wyzek, who was the author of the actual task force report. And so Irene and I would like to take you through the work that we did and share with you how we came up with and then what's in our new competency map. So why did this project even get undertaken? CPA Canada and the provinces recognized that the world in which our work takes place is constantly changing. And as CPAs, we need to adapt to that changing world. So they started off by populating a task force, and it's been a real privilege for Irene and I to be working with the task force members. We worked with academics, we had members from the public sector, from the private sector, and we had incredible support predominantly provided by the staff at CPA Canada. And so over the past 2 years, we've been working on this new competency map. But the challenge was, how do you take the existing map, which consists of 160 pages, about 180 competencies, and how do you make it relevant for today's world? And so we were given a very daunting task. We were told, start from scratch, start from a blank page. And so fast forward to where we are today. The competency map that you now have in front of you is about 30 pages and about 35 competencies. And so I'd like to take you on a little bit of the journey as to how we got from that 160 pages to today's 30 odd pages. We resisted the temptation for the first year or so to pick up the pen and write. We took to heart the mandate of starting with a blank page. And so for the first year, we actually learned and we listened. We started with a literature review. We looked at competency maps from not just the CPA profession, but other professions. We looked at competency maps from around the world. And then we conducted our own research. We said, what do we need to know before we actually start drafting something new? And perhaps most importantly, we met with literally thousands of people. We conducted hundreds of both formal and informal consultations. They ranged from groups that we coordinated ourselves to being invited in to speak at conferences and test our hypotheses and the premises that we were working under. And so it was only after about a year's work of learning and listening that we actually started drafting the new map. And we started with some basic principles. We said it's critical, we think, that we have a map that can change and adapt. The current process that we're going through, which will take 4 to 5 years for the new map to be drafted and then implemented, is just not sustainable in a changing world. As a profession, we can't change in 4 and 5 year increments. So our hope is that in the new map, you will see a map that is less prescriptive than what we've seen in the past, but also a map that still balances both the technical competencies that make us accountants together with foundational competencies that reflect the world in which we conduct our work. We hope you see a map that encourages lifelong and career-long learning. And so what do we mean by that? You will see, for example, in the new map that we think it's important that new CPAs understand what tax credits are. But we don't think it's important that they have memorized a list of 100 tax credits that exist at a particular point in time. We also think that it's important that the map reflects the world in which we work. So as I mentioned, there are technical competencies. There are the things that make us accountants. But you'll also see foundational and sub-foundational competencies that say we think it's important that new CPAs understand the world in which our work takes place. So you'll see references to equity, diversity, and inclusion. You'll see references to new CPAs understanding Canada's history with its Indigenous people. And you'll see references to environmental, social, and governance, or ESG. Because as I say, I think it's important that we recognize the world in which our work takes place. I want to take a minute just to thank the provinces, the territories, and CPA Canada. They gave us a blank page mandate, and for the last 2 years, they've let us stay true to that mandate. The map that you're looking at today is very different than what has existed in the past. And the provinces, the territories, and CPA Canada have supported the task force throughout our work and ultimately have approved the map that you have in front of you. To get into the specifics, I'd now like to turn it over to Irene, who will take you through some very detailed discussion around what actually is in the new competency map. So Irene?
Okay, thanks, Tim. And let's get the slide deck up there. Okay, thank you. All right, let's go to the next slide. So as Tim says, it's our pleasure. It's been our pleasure to work with the task force, an amazing task force, and our pleasure to work with all our stakeholders. As Tim said, we worked with or heard from thousands of you, and it was it's been an incredible journey. So Tim talked a little bit about the need for change here, and this slide what is Competency Map 2.0? It just talks about that. We've always brought value or added value and rigor through our expertise and our integrity. And we will continue to do that even as the world changes. But it's the change piece that is sort of is the call to action to the profession right now, to sort of rethink the skills and competencies in the context of that tremendous change. So let's go to the next slide. So process-wise, as Tim said, we first met on March 5th, 2020, and the map was issued about almost to the day 2 years later, March 1st, 2022, and it will be rolled out in 2024 and 2025. We went through a process of researching, and we had a very robust research portfolio that was led and managed by Rebecca Villman, and thanks, Rebecca, for that. And then we had a very broad and inclusive outreach process where we heard from many of our stakeholders, many diverse views. We moved into the drafting phase where we involved stakeholders in the very initial drafting of the map. And then finally into we produced a draft map and released it on July 5th. And we went through another consultation phase or comment period until the end of September, and again collected more information and feedback. We finalized the map, and it went through the approval process across Canada, and it was approved by the end of December. And now it gets passed on to the Certification 2.0 team, which will look at where, when, and how the competencies that we've outlined in Competency Map 2.0 will be learned and assessed. And you can see there at the bottom, we involved over 3,000 stakeholders in the process. So it was very rewarding and great to hear, people's thoughts on how things should change and how we should adapt. Let's go to the next slide, please. So the emerging themes throughout, and there were 5. The first one was emerging and growing areas of opportunity. And so we saw some things scream to the forefront. Of course, data, all things data scream to the forefront, including data governance. Also, all things sustainability scream to the forefront, and including things like value creation. And so there is sort of this focus on how things are changing and how we might deal with those things. The second thing was the influence of automation. So we heard how traditional entry-level jobs were being automated. And sort of we started to think about where are the opportunities for entry-level CPAs? What new opportunities are opening up? The burgeoning body of knowledge was reaffirmed. So everybody felt that there was a stuffed curriculum before we started, and people reaffirmed that throughout the process. Growing interconnectedness. And so there we did see and hear and observe that we're increasingly part of a hyper-connected ecosystem. And that where people are connected to people are connected to things, and things are connected to things. Think of the Internet of Things. But and especially over the last 2 years through the pandemic, we've seen how important that connectivity is. So that was the fourth thing. And then the fifth thing was the whole idea of CPAs as leaders. And the idea that we've always brought expertise and integrity to situations, in the areas of accounting and management and leadership. And there was an opportunity and a need for us to continue to do so, even given the exponential change that's going on around us. So those were the emerging themes. Let's go to the next slide. So CM 2.0 prepares future-ready CPAs by doing 6 things we've identified here. The first one on the left-hand side is by fostering human skills and values that are resilient in the face of automation. So again, we talked about that automation trend. And so we wanted to make sure that the emphasis was on what humans can do and as we as professionals and humans can do as compared to a machine. And so there's a focus on higher level human skills such as creativity, curiosity, resilience, agility. The second thing there, creating future focused pre-certification CPAs that are tech savvy and understand our hyper-connected environment. So again, there a little bit of a shift towards forward-looking. The more things change, the more you have to be looking forward. As one of our stakeholders had said to us, if you're driving in an environment that's changing all the time, you don't want to be looking in your rear view mirror. You want to be looking forward. And so it's a little bit of a shift to more forward-looking and embracing the technology to do so and to help us. And so it is working with the technology and the machines. The third one was laying the foundations for evergreen learning, including an evergreen learning mindset. As Tim says, we need that agile mindset. And we identified evergreen learning as having three things. The first one was curiosity. Second is a thirst for knowledge. And third is a commitment to continue to learn and acquire knowledge and skills, especially in the changing environment. Fourth thing, focusing on a broader integrated foundational common core that facilitates collaboration and the decision process. So you will see that there's a foundational common core for all. There's no specializations pre-certification. And you'll see that it's broader. Our hope is in that it being broader, that it will facilitate collaborations with others in other areas, such as data scientists. We see an increasing need for that. Also, though, collaboration with machines, to augment our human intelligence. So that's an important factor there. The next one is about embedding an ethical mindset in a socially aware and inclusive manner. So ethics has always been the cornerstone of the profession. It continues to be. We're reaffirming that. But we broadened it a little bit to sort of just say, make sure that when we're doing things, it's in a socially aware and inclusive manner. For instance, when we're innovating, we want to innovate in an ethical manner. The last one there is embracing the higher calling of the profession to protect the public and act in the public interest. And so that's, again, the same, but we've brought it to the forefront again, especially given that our stakeholder needs are changing. And we wanted to ensure that that sort of more broader view of stakeholder needs was taken into account. For instance, protecting the public may mean something different where the emphasis is on sustainability. All right, so a little bit of a broadening there. Let's go to the next slide, please. Okay, this slide is a visual embodiment of CM 2.0 as a fully integrated and interconnected ecosystem. So that diagram says it all. So all 30 pages in that one diagram. And again, what we did find was as we get more and more data coming at us, people get sort of weary of so much information. So the visualization as a means of communication becomes very important. So this visualization is pretty critical to the map. And you can see, again, there's no silos here, and human skills and values and professional competencies are integrated with foundational and decision competencies. And you can see there's a circle there, and there's a tree in the middle. So let's go to the right-hand side of the slide there. So at the center, the middle, that's the tree, and it's the integrated common core. And in the integrated common core in that tree, there's two parts to it. And if you look at the tree, you can see there's two little things on each side with dots. Those are actually brains. They're meant to be a mindset. That's the ethical mindset. And then the other things, the roots, the trunk, and the branches and the leaves, that is the foundational common core. So in the center there in that tree, you can see the human skills and values, the brains and the professional competencies are integrated with the foundational common core competencies. And there's 11 foundational common core competencies, which I'll talk to in a moment. There are also what we call topic areas, which sort of draw a line around when we say we're accountants. This is sort of what people would expect us to know and be able to be competent in. So I'll talk about those in a moment as well. So there's the tree in the middle. Around the edges is a circle, and it's called the decision process. And it's got 5 steps, and the 5 steps are things you'd expect with any decision, so assess the situation. What am I trying to do? Then I've got to plan and decide an approach. Then I'm going to implement the approach and make sure I'm measuring and managing the performance. And then I complete it, and then I'm going to reflect and learn. And there's evergreen learning throughout that whole cycle there. So there's 5 steps there, and we have 24 competencies that are sort of tucked in under those 5 steps, and those are called the decision competencies. And the decision process is about applying the integrated common core, the tree in the middle. It's about taking those foundational things and applying them within a decision. And it's not just decision making, it's implementing and effecting and monitoring the decision as well. So that's important. Let's go to the next slide. So again, remember the tree in the middle, and it had those 2 little dots. All right, that's the CPA ethical mindset. So I'm just going to talk about that for a moment, and then I'll talk about the other part of that tree on the next slide. But let's stay on this slide for the moment. So you can see there is the brain. So that's the ethical mindset, and it's got 3 layers: who we are, what we do, and where we do it. And you can see that within layer 1, who we are, you can see the traditional professional competencies that you would recognize. We protect the public and act in the public interest with integrity, due care, all those things that are embedded in our codes of conduct. And then we've added in, or we've pulled out the human skills and values. And those are sort of those higher level human cognitive skills that differentiate us from machines. So we're innovative, collaborative, agile, curious, creative, and there's a list there you can see. Again, as we continue to learn, lead, and grow, excuse me, so that's the sort of evergreen learning mindset embedded there. Layer 2, what we do, and so you can see there we create and sustain value for stakeholders by bringing logic, structure, and trust to information, as well as the process of measuring and managing performance. So there's a lot there, but it is about performance. You'll note here that we've also embedded some sustainability ideas, so the ideas of stakeholders. So it's a stakeholder focus, which is broader than just a shareholder investor kind of focus. You'll also see there we talk about creating longer term value as opposed to short term value. And you can see it's sort of a broader perspective. So not only are we thinking about people and organizations, but we're also thinking about on a broader stage society and the planet. And so there is bringing in sort of, right now you hear all the discussions around sustainability and moving to net zero and greenhouse gas emissions and all that. So this is us sort of saying that we do care, and we are going to be a big part of that conversation. And then the third layer is where we do it. So we're in a global environment, and that speaks to the connectivity. So we're globally connected. We're proudly Canadian, but we're globally part of a group of accountants and other stakeholders. Let's go to the next slide. So this slide now, again, think about the circle there with the tree in the middle. So we're still on the tree. So we did the 2 little dots. We did the CPA ethical mindset, and now we're going to look at the foundational common core, which is the roots, the trunk, and the branches and leaves. And there are 11 competencies here, so 11 foundational common core competencies. And if we start at on the right-hand side, the sub-foundational, so the roots, as Tim said, sort of the roots sort of reflect the general and emerging areas that are present in the global environment within which CPAs work. So it's sort of more about the context there. And that is at a lower level of proficiency. And I'll talk a little bit about what topics go in each of these areas later, but let's just lay the groundwork here. So sub-foundational is stuff, about the environment within which we work. Then moving to the middle, foundational competencies, that reflects those areas of study that are related to business, government, and other organizations, and the way they are structured and operate. And so that's more the business organizational kind of focus and government focus. And that's at an intermediate level of proficiency, so it's stepped up a level. And then on the left-hand side is the specific competencies, and that reflects the area of professional accounting. So we left that kind of broad, professional accounting, but this is kind of where we sit as accountants, but it builds on the sub-foundational and the foundational competencies. And you can see on the left, the specific competencies, that's at a higher level of proficiency. So let's now go to the next slide. So this slide talks about the topic areas. I did mention those earlier, but you can see sub-foundational topic areas, foundational topic areas, and specific topic areas. So these kind of follow those headings that we had in the foundational common core. And So again, this is sort of we laid it out so people can see what we mean when we say we're CPAs, sort of what would they expect from us. Again, it's broader. It involves both traditional areas and emerging areas, and it articulates the foundations upon which the profession is built and the body of knowledge is built. So if we start on the right-hand side, sub-foundational topics, you can see we've got, for instance, Indigenous views there and indigeneity, and that's anchored in the Truth and Reconciliation Commission call to action and the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. And you can see we've got systems thinking and complexity theory. Again, in a world of hyperconnectedness, we need to think not only just about one part, we need to think how that one part interacts with everything else that is connected to everything else in the ecosystem. So that becomes more important. If we move to the middle, you can see we've got economics and the underlying areas of quantitative methods and probability. So math is escalated and elevated a little bit because in a world of AI and algorithms, we need to have a better understanding of the math that underlies that. Also, as we move into a world of greater change, that brings greater uncertainty. We need to sort of understand a little bit better the math that underlies that. You can see organizational behavior, including human behavior and bias. Very important. A lot of issues that arise in our current environment are due to human beings doing things that they shouldn't be doing, maybe because of conscious or unconscious bias. So we've elevated that a little bit. And you can see we've added or made visible change management and conflict management. Anytime there's change and there's scarce resources, there's going to be some discussion about where the resources get allocated. So there might be conflicts there. So we've put that there and visible. And you can see sustainability. So we put that in originally as a sub-foundational topic, and our stakeholders gave us the feedback they needed to see it at a higher level of proficiency. So we moved it to the foundational topic area. And truth be told, that could probably even move up to specific topic areas, and I'm sure it will in the next couple of years, or 3 to 5 years for sure. And then if you go to the specific topic areas on the left-hand side, you see some traditional things. You can see assurance there, ethics, finance, financial reporting, management decision-making, strategy, tax. And then there's the more emerging areas like, big data, data analytics, data governance, data systems and technology, non-financial reporting, innovation, and value creation. So the idea is to sort of reaffirm that, hey, we're there in those traditional areas, but we're also in these more emerging areas. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, so we were talking about the tree so far, so let's go back to that circle. So the circle around the edges, that's the decision process. And again, the idea is to take the tree and the foundational common core, that integrated common core, and apply it in decisions. And it's not only decision making, as I said, it's effecting and carrying out and monitoring the decision and the outcomes. And there's 5 steps, as I already articulated there, and the 24 competencies are embedded within those 5 steps. Again, just note that it's a fully integrated model. Again, everything together, no silos, human skills and values and professional competencies fully embedded, as well as sort of all those topics. The multi-topic perspective is there. Let's go to the next slide, please. And so how do we move forward? Okay, so the task force came up with some principles to pass over to the Certification 2.0 team to guide the work that's going to be done as the next step. The first principle was about evergreen learning, the fact that this has got to be continual, and we have to have that curiosity, the thirst for new knowledge, and a commitment to learn new things as things continue to change. And in a period of lots of change, obviously, an evergreen mindset is critical. The second thing is ethics in everything. Ethics is a differentiating factor for CPAs since we're a profession. We have that higher calling. We need to protect the public and act in the public interest. So that's what differentiates us from others, for instance, MBAs, who are not a profession in of themselves. And so this needs to be very visible, as always. Number 3, foundational common core for all. So again, it's that broader foundational common core. Again, no specializations. Everybody learns the same thing. And it's more about education as opposed to training for a little specific, role that a CPA might play. It's about that broader education. The fourth is about the integration of the human skills and values. We've talked about that a lot today. So it's the human skills and values and professional competencies, and across all the competencies, across all those topic areas. So those are not separate things. It's important to keep it sort of as one solid, interconnected and integrated decision process model. The fifth one is the balance between traditional accounting and emerging areas. We heard very loudly that traditional accounting is who we've always been and who we will continue to be. So that has to be visible. But then we also want to sort of balance that off against emerging areas. And when we covered off the topic areas, you see we've highlighted traditional areas like assurance tax, strategy, those kinds of things, but we've also highlighted emerging areas. And if we are to be truly future focused, we need to keep our eye on those emerging areas. But of course, reaffirming that we are these traditional accountants who bring rigor to the table with our integrity and our expertise. So those are the 5 principles that we're going to pass along, and we'll continue to work with the CERT 2.0 team to make sure that these principles are fully embedded as the map goes to get operationalized. So let's go to the next slide. So what are the next steps? So we are all committed to a deliberate and smooth transition through the period up to 2024, 25 and beyond. And the map will, even though it's been issued March 1st, 2022, this year, it will be rolled out in 2024 and 2025. So this gives us a little bit of breathing room to figure out how we can implement the map and effect that smooth transition. The CERT 2.0 project will look at where, when, and how the skills and competencies that we've articulated in CM 2.0 will be learned and assessed. All right, so there's the 2 components. When, where, and how are things going to be learned? And when, where, and how are things going to be assessed? Implementation guidance will be issued throughout the next year and 2 years. And we will have support for both, students and faculty and employers, so all of our stakeholders. So there will be support there, and we're here for you. Let's go to the last slide here. So if you want to learn a little bit more, if you haven't already seen the map, well, we have a website there, and on the website is the map itself in a PDF form that's hyperlinked. We also have a little video, and there's some questions and answers for you. Okay, so go there, and we're going to keep your eye on that site because we'll be updating information there. The CERT 2.0 team will be. And yeah, so you can, just keep yourself abreast of those changes. So thanks for spending time with us today. It's been our pleasure, and we're looking forward to collaborating with you as we move forward. Thanks.